It is finally time for Dune, a book with dense lore and the potential to be stupidly silly. Comes at a time when comic nerds and the mainstream people are used to dense, serialized storytelling in big movies. Denis Villeneuve's careful handling of Arrival and Blade Runner proved him to be the perfect steward of incredibly difficult material. Matt, what'd you think about Dune?
Dune Part 1, by the way. They don't hide it. You had like It, which is another Warner Bros. Movie, that it was like, this is it. And at the end, they were like, Part 1. Dune opens up.
But this isn't totally it.
No. This is Dune Part 1 of 2. I'm pretty sure 2. I really like Denis Villeneuve's filming style. Love Blade Runner. I love his sense of scope. I love just everything he's able to do and really make settings and worlds feel different. Yeah, there's a lot of rich lore and world building just within his shots. Me, I'm pretty much a Dune newbie. Never read the original Frank Herbert novel. Seen very little parts and pieces of David Lynch's. I did watch a very fantastic documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, which
great.
if you've never seen that, look it up. So that's most of what I knew about Dune going in. This movie is 2.5 hours of just straight character-driven drama. It's really easily described as Game of Thrones in space. That's kind of what it felt like to me. Despite there not being a ton of rising and falling action, I was consistently engaged. I think a lot due to just the all-star cast. I think the performances were top of the line. Timothée Chalamet did fantastic as Paul Atreides. Oscar Isaac did great as his dad, Duke Leto. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. Stellan Skarsgård, even though he's only in it for a few scenes. I think that's probably my biggest complaint about Dune Part 1 in general, is that, like you said, it's so dense. It's going to be impossible to fit every aspect. And what Villeneuve tried to do is get the important bits and organically kind of introduce them to the viewer in cool ways. So I was into the idea of a lot of these things, like the mystical what are the Bene Gesserit? I can't remember the names. They're like these cloaked.
They're like female Jedi that have been trying. They have powers. They can control people with their words, with the voice, and they've been trying for generations
voice is cool.
to create a male chosen one that will be the Anakin Skywalker.
Dune has a lot of those really, really cool ideas, and I think I was just enveloped in the world and really, really into it. But this movie is very much just like 50% of a movie. It ends, and then you're kind of sitting there going like, I really enjoyed that, but I don't feel any sort of conclusion. I don't feel any sense of closure. Luckily now the second part has been greenlit, so we will get that closure.
Yeah.
But it definitely felt incomplete. So I really enjoyed the experience of watching it. I want to go back and watch it again so I can listen more and pay more attention to the characters, because a lot of them, like I said, they're only in a few scenes here and there. But what was here was great. I think Denis Villeneuve did the best he possibly could have, unless they made it into like an HBO series or a Showtime series or something with 10, 12 hours.
Yeah, it really should have been.
I think so. I just don't think they would have been able to get the money for it. But then again, we have
you're not going to get
Thrones,
all these. You're not going to get this cast.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I thought that the CGI was appropriately weird looking, but that's by design. I really enjoy the starship design, both in Dune and Villeneuve's Arrival. So I like that it doesn't look like anything we've ever seen.
No, very
and
bug-like.
that really, it gives you a really good sense of time and place. And like I said, even though it's 2.5 hours and it's very, very much like character-driven scene, maybe an action scene here and a cool like sandworm, I was completely enveloped. And I'm not sure if it was the hype, because God knows Dune is one of the most hyped up projects there ever has been in the last 10 years. But I liked it. Matt, what did you think? Are you a Dune expert? You never read the book?
I've read a little bit of the book, and I watched the David Lynch one about 15 years ago, and
Sure.
I was really turned off by the David Lynch movie.
I hear some people love it, some people hate it. It's very divisive.
Lynch is really great at conveying the weirdness of Dune and making it feel really exotic and sort of like the obsession with kind of body and mind, but it's impossible to do that book and the story in one movie, and the studios at the time cut it down even more. So I mean,
it's David Lynch, and he wants to do crazy. We're gonna have to cover David Lynch when we launch our upcoming second channel. The dude's crazy.
like you were talking about that documentary with Jodorowsky, his idea looked amazing, but he needed 10 to 12 hours to tell it, which at the time wasn't not possible. But if this would have been, say, a Netflix series, an HBO series or something,
it felt like that at
that
times,
makes
to
the
be
most
honest.
sense. Oh, totally. There were so many times where I felt like this would be the good end of an episode, and now they're in the desert, and it really feels like an episode where I felt like Sporky had mentioned, he's like, it really feels like a two-parter, and where I felt it was about the middle, or sort of like just after the middle climax. I really felt like, okay, we're winding down, and there was a lot of talk of like, what's over there? Oh, that's where we're going to go. And I was like, I felt like, it's kind of over, and you're just calming me down. Luckily, it was saved by a really great climactic ending fight, but and I'm glad they split it into two. You really felt it. Overall, Denis Villeneuve, I love his the atmosphere. I love his deliberate pace. I thought he was the perfect choice for the movie. I really enjoyed it. Overall, I thought it was pretty successful. It's a very difficult world to do because there's so much lore, politics, crazy terminology. But I think that Villeneuve was almost overboard with how accessible he wanted to make it. Anytime there was exposition, it was like really, really fast. They didn't over-explain anything, but it kind of felt like he was a bit self-conscious of being kind of too weird. And at some points, they even tried to make it a bit more like Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, when Javier Bardem comes and talks to them the first time, and he's spitting, and Jason Momoa is doing these like Marvel jokes, and I'm like,
You can feel a little bit. To your point, though, let's talk. We're not going to get into spoilers, but like Matt said and I said, there's so many different aspects of this world that you have to kind of introduce to the audience, but you don't want to barrel them down in exposition. And I think he did a good job in some places, but in other places, there was just not a lot. So the whole point of Dune is that you have the House Atreides with Paul, who's like the prince of House Atreides, and his dad, and they're given rulership over Arrakis, which is a dune sand planet that has the spice. It is a super cool compound that allows you to do tons of crazy things.
Well, specifically travel, space travel.
Yeah, space travel. Other people use it for different powers. Like in the film, there are these two characters where someone will ask them something, and they'll just flip their eyes up into their head and come back down. It's like a math problem or something. Those dudes are known as mentats, according to somebody who knows more. And
the human computers.
They also use spice. So it's like this crazy thing that enables so many different superhuman, interstellar, but you only get a teeny bit about it in the beginning as like Paul is listening to an audiobook. And and then that is kind of removed because immediately now we have to introduce the female Jedi, and now we have to introduce the Harkonnens, and now we have to introduce all this other stuff. So a lot of this movie left me wanting more. And I'm not sure if it was, well, I want more because I want to know more about it and I want them to explain it, or if it was just because that's what he was intending,
But that's why people love the novel, is that they get to explore this stuff. All these crazy concepts are coming up, but you have the time. So you really feel like, I could spend a whole episode just kind of going over this. Yeah. And that would be enough. And this character, and then when certain characters do certain things, no spoilers, there would be more weight behind it. I will say, though, that even though it didn't feel really, really glossed over, like this is the Coles notes of it, we don't want anybody to get bored or overwhelmed. I will say that, okay, when they're talking about the spice, it was immediately apparent to me that spice is so important because it is the only way they can do space travel. And we see all these spaceships. So you go like, okay, so it's gas. Basically, that's the metaphor of it.
Interstellar fuel.
But all of a sudden, people are going to be used to traveling the universe and now limited to their homes. And then you really feel the pressure that this family, the Atreides house, is tasked with something huge. You need to go to this place, dominate a planet and a people, and you're now in charge of this. Meanwhile, your rivals have been kicked out of there, the Harkonnens.
Immediately you're into like this political kind of all these political subterfuge going on, and it shifts into this other sort of narrative. And then you have the chosen one kind of sub narrative. So there's like a lot of stuff going on. I would have wanted it to be twice as long. I think that's what we're going to keep coming back to, is that it needs more hours.
It is.
But we're going to have more. Dune in my head after watching, I've only seen it once. It's something that I need to rewatch. It just is a lot of events all at once. And the only thing that really sticks out to me is that because a lot of characters only got a few scenes and some information was glossed over, a bit of the emotion was lost. When you look at some other Denis Villeneuve movies like Arrival and Prisoners, the characters, you have these big emotional moments and you feel it. In this movie, you have characters dying left and right that are important, but it feels like a footnote, right? Whereas you think in the source material, that's a big thing and I should feel more strongly about it. But once again, I think it was just a matter of how much time they had to spend on those characters and where you put your focus. But overall, I was really into it.
Yeah, I felt like for the task of it, this is an incredibly difficult novel to adapt. And I think that he really did probably the best job you could do to present this as a big budget mainstream film. And you're gonna have these parts, like you were saying, where you felt like you're lacking. I guess, for me, one of the things I was disappointed with is that when I think of Villeneuve, I think big epic scale. I think Blade Runner. There's so much great practical effects. I felt like with Dune, I was a bit surprised that the CGI, when you first see the sand harvester right before the first worm attack, I won't say anything else, but I mean, you've seen all that in the trailer. You know that there's going to be worms and harvesters.
If you've seen the trailer, you've seen a lot of this movie.
Yes. Well, yeah, definitely. Don't watch anything other. Try not to watch any trailer, and especially nothing after the first trailer.
Warner Bros. Trailers in specific, when you see that official main trailer, Warner Bros. Has a habit of putting even the last scene in the trailer. Yeah. So Warner Bros. Specific teaser, and then bounce,
they try to be clever too, where they offer a different perspective to what it is. So like in context, you might think that this is that, but in the movie it's different. But when I first saw this harvester, I thought, man, it's a lot of CGI and not really all that impressive. And later on, there would be moments where, behind them, there is a big practical set. And I kind of felt like the sand, I didn't really feel all that impressed by it. I didn't really feel like I was kind of immersed in that world. I like the acting.
You heard it here first. The sand in Dune was not the sandiest it could have been. No. 2 thumbs down from that.
That's all you have. You have to make the sand look awesome.
It's a sand planet, guys. What are we doing?
Yeah, I was a little let down there, and I kind of felt like it was a bit empty sometimes. I felt like sometimes it was just a small cast walking around, more CGI sets than I really would have wanted. And other times they made up for that. Like I loved like the hand-to-hand combat stuff. I thought was done pretty well, but yeah, I was surprised at that.
I was going to say the thing that I like about Villeneuve, specifically Blade Runner, you have these giant set pieces, these really big, this big sense of scope, but really the core of Blade Runner 2049 is the mystery, right? Same thing with Prisoners.
Which is why I don't want to watch Blade Runner again. The second time I watched it, it's not that great.
Maybe you'll notice some fun things that he sneaked in there. But I think there was so much effort put into taking all of this content and, like you said, making it digestible for a mainstream audience that you lost a bit of that like philosophical kind of intrigue, mystery that you would expect out of a Villeneuve movie. But then again, that might be just me taking the director's style and impressing it on a project that didn't need it. Mm-hmm. But that's me going into the movie with expectations from Denis Villeneuve, which is, I think at this point, inarguably one of the biggest directors. He's up there with Nolan now. Like after Blade Runner and Arrival and all that stuff, it's Villeneuve all the way, baby. I would like to see what... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say with him, I feel like his movies do feel a little cold. Like Christopher Nolan, I think that they're both really good at size, and Villeneuve is so deliberate and he really cares. He puts so much passion and like a heaviness and a weight, but he does feel a little bit removed from sort of the human aspect. But I will say that the casting and the performances, they really did so much because they had to convey so much with just
I thought
looks,
it was fantastic.
Sign
Rebecca
language.
Ferguson kills it. Yeah, dude, like they just do sign language. Rebecca Ferguson speaks like 4 different languages. There's a lot of really cool, like just organic moments that happen. Yeah. But it was the characters that were really driving it for me. I do want to just talk about Hans Zimmerman's score. Yeah. I'd finish your thought if you have one, but I mean, man, the score. What do you think about it?
I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan. Really big. And
I call him Hans Zimmerman. My bad. Hans Zimmer.
That's pretty close. Classic. He is a man. Hans Zimmer, man.
Good. Yes.
And he passed on doing Christopher Nolan's Tenet to do Dune because he's such a big fan of the book. And I felt in the score you could really hear the reverence he has for it, where I think he stepped up his game and he changed things ever since Dunkirk.
Different.
Yeah, it's very different because ever since Dunkirk, he's been doing this more. Like you and I are both huge fans of Interstellar and that track, which has more
so good.
melodies and it's so emotional. Whereas Dunkirk fit perfectly, but it's not a score I would put on and listen to. It's very like just
jam out to the Dunkirk OT or OST.
Yeah, it just sounds like submarines smashing into each other.
Yeah,
and a lot of his stuff can sound like that lately. His more recent work, but I found this one he was branching out a little bit more. I thought he was not getting up his own ass, which he is wont to do. He did kind of. Some of it was a bit pretentious. Some of the, like, when he's really trying to convey this is the chosen one, and some of the more like religious aspects of it. But I thought it was pretty creative. It's definitely probably not in his top 10 work that he's done, but I thought it was pretty good and a positive step for him.
If anything, I think a lot of the musical strikes and some of those it did a really good job of setting the tone, right?
Yeah.
And if anything, Dune is one of the most immersive movies of the year. I think it really is one that you sit down and you're in it, right? Even if you're not super intrigued about the story or the characters, you feel like you're put in that world, and a lot of that is due to the visuals and then also to Hans Zimmer's score. So I have to give him props there. We oftentimes gloss over scores in films because we talk about so much other stuff, but I thought it was definitely worth discussing.
What'd you think about Momoa?
You know what? Momoa, I thought, like you said, he does at times kind of fall back onto his MCU-ish DC kind of jokies, a lot of Patton people and I'm Water Thor, but when he needed to hold it up, trying to avoid spoilers, there's some moments where not his true colors, but his actual character comes through. And I think Momoa did a very good job of being that personable kind of bodyguard that was fighting for the greater good. It might not have come out in the script all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, it comes down to the same thing we've been talking about. Like, I really like Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Vladimir Harkin, but he's in like 4 scenes. He steals almost every scene.
Yeah, it feels like he's in a lot more.
But it's very minimal. Who else is in there?
I wasn't that big on Momoa. I thought that first off, he probably should have cleared his throat maybe before he did a lot of scenes. A lot of time. A lot of grunt. He says this one line where he's talking about how fearsome these people are. I won't spoil. And he's like, everyone else we are speaking like this. This is in the future. We are British aristocracy. And he's like, I got to tell you, this is exactly how he said. Got to tell you, fought them. Closest I've ever come to dying.
Yeah, it's like you picked up a dude from 2015 and just dropped him in the middle of Arrakis.
Yeah, but
you're like, you know what set you're on, buddy?
But there's another moment where he appears and you're supposed to have this feeling of, oh, he's here. It's very heroic. And I felt like where that works with casting is that people who are big fans of Game of Thrones and maybe DC movies, they love Jason Momoa so much that I could feel the audience being like, yeah, it's Jason Momoa. And they were right there with the other characters who were like, yes, the character you're playing. But I thought he's kind of like Schwarzenegger. He's very good physically. He's a good presence. I like his, he's great in the fight scenes, and he's, he just has a great look, but I really didn't like how he delivered any of the lines. And it felt like, when they give Gal Gadot a lot of technical dialogue, and you're like, she should not be the narrator. They shouldn't. Him trying to like discuss all this technology, and blah, blah, blah. Like, pass.
What do you think I feel like Josh Brolin did a very good job, and I feel like Josh Brolin and Jason Momoa, obviously very different characters, but they share a similar, not path in the movie, but I feel like you could almost taken Josh Brolin and swapped him for Jason Momoa, and I think it would have been a bit better, but then I don't know who you would have put in Josh Brolin's place. The more I think about this movie, the more other characters are popping in. The Baron Harkonness his like buddy who has like
Polka Dot Man
thing. Polka Dot Man. I love that actor, and I thought
from the Suicide Squad.
I thought he did pretty good job. He's also in Prisoners too.
He was
Denis Villeneuve likes him.
He is perfect for this movie because he is an odd-looking guy, even without the makeup, and he kind of looks like he is not quite human.
Slimy Slytherin.
Yeah, he's very Slytherin. He looks like a little baby Voldemort. He was so good as a creepy sidekick. You can really see into his soul through those creepy eyes. He was fantastic. Man, the
I do have
cast.
to props for one thing. Zendaya. Zendaya is in this film. In the
Yeah.
trailers, they make it seem like she's in. She's not. Very,
No.
very few. But damn, if that girl ain't good at looking pretty in flashbacks or visions,
Well,
there's a lot of
I mean,
really.
she was a model first, right? So
Oh, I
she's
had no clue.
that's it. Yeah, I follow her on Instagram. All of it is just her so like striking poses, and that's what she does. I saw a
You're like,
reviewer
Paul.
describe, because most of the time in this, it's all just dream sequences. And
Yes.
somebody described it like as the most arid perfume commercial you've ever seen in your life is how Villeneuve decides to shoot it.
But that's the thing is I felt in those shots like I felt what Paul was feeling about this kind of connection to this mysterious beautiful woman and the kind of want to know
Yeah.
more about her, whether or not that's because of the directorial style or just Zendaya looking beautiful as always. I got that from her in this film, whereas if you watch Spider-Man, we're doing all the MCU movies on our other channel, which we'll have information about later, but she pops up in later Spider-Man movies, same actress but completely different character, but in this movie she's just very alluring, and I don't know, I just
Well,
wanted to
she
give
has.
her props.
I mean, she is.
She's in it for like 10 minutes.
She definitely can convey an importance, sort of like a magicalness, a mysticalness, but she's kind of spunky as well.
Yep.
She seems like somebody that wouldn't take shit. She does. She is pretty incredible for the very small amount that she has to do in this part of the movie.
She'll be in it more in this. She has to be. It's a big thing for part 2. So hopefully we'll get the full Zendaya effect.
Speaking of amazing special effects, there's a part where Timothy Chalamet and Josh Brolin are sparring. And
Yeah.
Josh,
I was going to ask you what you thought about yeah.
Oh, I love that. It was great. The shield effect was weird, but not cringy.
Reminded me of Halo almost, like Halo 1.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I like that really kind of quick, almost like in the Bourne movies, where it's like really quick, kind of deadly. I like that they in this world they mostly fight with melee weapons, although the ships have bombs and guns and lasers. So I don't know why anybody would ever bother to fight on the ground, but who cares about that? But the special effect I'm talking about,
Stormtroopers or something. Yeah, go ahead.
Chalamet knocks down Josh Brolin, and then with one hand picks him up off the ground. It's like that must have taken some incredible special effects for 90-pound Timothy Chalamet to be able to lift up mountain rock man Josh Brolin.
Brolin brings a lot of energy. There's one line in particular, I think it's in the trailer, where he's like, "You've never fought these people. They're brutal." And I'm like, "Ooh, you brought it." And I think that's kind of where I think maybe you could have swapped Brolin and Momoa.
Actually, yeah, that you just gave me chills because I was thinking about the beginning of when
I
they
always
spar.
give you chills, Matt. Just now it's on camera.
Yeah, when he rated R, when Josh Brolin, when they're doing that sparring scene, the ferocity, the aggressiveness that because Brolin's character is trying to impart him like this is fucking serious.
Yeah, you don't get a choice of when you fight. You fight now.
So he is so.
I also have goosebumps. I think Dune's a great movie. I think I've decided it is. I think we were both kind of a little bit on the fence. A lot of people. I
was confused about how I thought about it because there's so many parts I like, and there's a lot of things I can kind of pick away at it. But overall, when I think of the task that Villeneuve had to do this, I think he did better than anybody could have ever done, and overall, it's pretty successful.
I want a Villeneuve Harry Potter movie. When they remake Harry Potter in 40 years, just get Villeneuve to do it. Just do all of them. Can you imagine like the Goblet of Fire? Just like that'd be cool.
He could do Harry Potter. So this is all like 20 years later. A more like grizzled Harry Potter.
Harry Potter's kid. You never fought the Dementors. They're brutal.
He needs to smuggle some magic powder dust across the border under in a tunnel.
Hey, I think Dune's good. I really hope. I mean, it did well enough in both theaters and on the HBO Max streaming platform that we got the greenlit sequel. I hope that people get into it because what I really like about Dune is that it is high sci-fi and it doesn't dumb things down for the audience. We talk about big popular serialized
it
things.
It skims
like
over, but it still embraces the weirdness. It's very true to the book for the most part.
And I think like MCU, if people show that they enjoy these kind of higher concept sci-fi, not only will that do well for future like Marvel movies as we're getting more into space stuff. But the idea of sci-fi in the future, it doesn't have to be an alien invasion or some schlocky kind of thing you've seen every time. You can have these really cool ideas, and maybe if audiences respond well to Dune, then we can get more cool ideas. I know that's kind of an oxymoron because Dune inspired almost all of the modern sci-fi movies we know. But I'd like to see
1965. It's incredible.
yeah, that they George Lucas read that shit and was like, Jedi, gotcha. Thanks, Herbert. It's a good time. Do we want to do thumbs up, thumbs down? You want to end this thing up? You got anything else doing in your mind about the Dune? I liked it a lot. I think it's just there, like you said, there's pieces and parts that I can pick at and be like, I wish this was better. But when you look at the task that Villeneuve had, I think he pulled out all the stops and he did the best he could.
Yeah,
and it was never going to be a perfect film.
I mean, definitely not perfect. I guess it's just the only thing I was a bit surprised is that it seemed like it was more cheaply made in terms of the practical effects. And maybe that's just because I thought we don't know how we're gonna do any of this stuff, so we have to use maybe a too over reliance on CGI that was surprisingly not like cutting edge. I mean, really, some of the ship CGI, the vehicle stuff, kind of looked like stuff that you'd see on the Sci-Fi Channel. I was a little blown away by that.
I think we've now been spoiled because you have these really, really big budget TV series like The Mandalorian or like Game of Thrones, where that stuff is fantastic in the CGI. And as soon as you take one step down, this is Dune. This is supposed to be a AAA blockbuster thing. And that's when you start to notice. And I think, like we said, we've been spoiled by Mandalorian and other things where if it's not cutting edge, you're going to notice it. I honestly didn't have too much of an issue with any of the CGI. I was very much just like, ooh, wow, look at the pretty colors and stuff like that. But like we said earlier, some points I was like, huh?
You said, look at the pretty colors. Orange and brown.
Hey man, there's and then the blue when they're shielding, and then everyone's got the blue eyes. I like the color palette, but it definitely at points you were like, this feels like a TV show, not like a TV show on cable, but like a big budget Game of Thrones TV show. And I think we're now reaching that point where films and big budget TV kind of intersect. So maybe I'm going off on a tangent. Dune is good. Watch it if you haven't already. I am excited for part 2. And a sign of a good film is one that leaves you wanting more, at least to see where the character. I could have watched this and been like, all right, I'm done. I've seen Dune, whatever, wasn't my thing. But I'm like, nope, I'll be there for Dune part 2.
I'm happy it was made. I'm happy Villeneuve did it, and I think he did better than anybody else could. And overall really successful. I would give it one really big sandworm, not the biggest sandworm,
but a medium sandworm.
Medium sandworm. Up.
Desert power. Yes, and this is.
There are some really cheesy lines. Desert power. The reverence they say the phrase desert power. But I think it's just because they're so. I would bet anything that's directly from the book.
From the book, yeah. I think it said at a certain point. Matt gives it one sandworm, but not the biggest sandworm up. And yes, it's gonna feel weird doing this because I've given 2 thumbs up to other movies, including MCU movies. Yeah, Dune is a 1 thumber up for me. It teeters on the half, but yeah,
I think you also have to reserve some of your judgment for the second part. I mean, if the second part comes through and it becomes like the payoff to all this setup, then it's going to raise the quality of this one.
Yes, which is weird. And as a reviewer who likes to put numbers or thumbs on things, it's weird. But that's how I feel right now. Good movie, worth the watch. Maybe not the best he's ever done, but God, in late 2021, it's one of the best things you can watch, I think.
Bye.
Hell yeah. Bye.